Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest of our discussions over Zoom. Today, we're with James Murphy, formerly of Adam and Eve, and now with a new startup, which we'll be concentrating on. And I'm joined by Graham Tyler of More Kingston Smith. Those who've watched these sessions before will be aware that Graham and I have swapped roles today. Normally, he takes the lead, but I'm doing that today. So, James. You started one of arguably the most successful advertising agency of all time, just around 13 years ago. You've cashed out, and along with one of your two co-founders of Adam and Eve, you've decided to put yourself through it again. Why?
I think, putting it very simply, to keep things fresh. I think that this is one of those, I think we work in a kind of, in an industry where I think if you're not feeling the frisson and the kind of energy and the need to do new things and kind of test yourself, then I think it's time to try something new or leave. And we were definitely thinking that, you know, we'd grown something and it was very successful, and I think we never would have believed that, in a sense, this startup that had a terribly stuttering start would become essentially the biggest agency in the UK. But that was definitely, I think, the cue to leave, because at that point you have a huge organisation. You have, I think we felt that we had not just succession management, but succession management for the succession management in place. And those people deserved their turn. And I think also, probably at the most personal level, we felt that we were spending far too much of our time doing management and not enough of our time working with clients. And this is a business where, you know, there are some people who are very good general managers and other people who are very good at solving clients' problems. And we felt that we were the latter, and it would be much more enjoyable to do that.
Do you feel that, particularly yourselves and David, and obviously we'll come to Ian in a minute, but yourself and David, you don't really have a financial imperative, to put it bluntly. You've obviously got a lot of money in the bank from the previous success. Mm-hmm. To what extent do you think that the hunger, the sense of, you know, you said yourself that it was tough at the start of Adam and Eve, and that must have been putting the pressure on you as the founders from the point of view of, Jesus, you know, what have we done? We've got to make this work or we're in trouble. And that is one hell of a kind of a motivating force. To be honest, you're not going to have that this time. Do you not think that's a necessary component?
Personally, I don't, because I think that I think for us, the money is a happy byproduct of doing something that we find actually somehow remains very, very stimulating and challenging and enjoyable. And I don't know. I think that were money the motivator, I think we'd be less successful at it, because we'd be making decisions for the wrong reasons, and I think we would be focusing on the wrong things. And you know, I mean, the way we started Adam and Eve, I mean, we couldn't have had a more traumatic first 2 years with sort of major litigation and things like that. And I think so. Part of the reason for doing this was we actually were quite keen to have the startup experience without the threat of sort of death hanging over us that we had last time.
One of the things you said, which is that as Adam and Eve got bigger, it became more about management, and it seems to me that's an issue that inevitably comes with scale. Does that kind of lessen your horizon on how big you want this new incorporation to become?
I mean, I think, probably going back to what I said previously, I think size isn't an aim for us. I think doing interesting work that makes a difference for clients is the thing that we enjoy. And if we grow as a result of that, we'll deal with that as it happens. But but certainly, and I mean, interestingly, last time there wasn't particularly. I mean, I don't think there will have been an agency that launched with less of a business plan than Adam and Eve did, and less of a fixed view about what it wanted to be. I mean, to the extent that even when we were asked what our vision was and our values, we were entirely mute on the subject, because we were just like, we wanted to do something we enjoyed. That was the vision and the values. And so I don't know, I think we're very, funnily enough, when we were talking to potential people to partner up with to do new commercial arts, some people said, it's a very interesting conversation, I'm sending you an email with some questions. And we got an email with something like 40 questions with, what do you think your, revenue would be in year 2 and your gross margin and stuff like that. And you're kind of like, I mean, I haven't got a clue. And it's not, that's not the thing that we almost look at it on a brief by brief basis, where you go, here comes a client, they appear to be a really good group of people with a very interesting challenge. It would be brilliant if we can solve the challenge for them. And it's about as straightforward as that.
Ian Hartfield was the third part of the. I mean, obviously, I don't know what the business arrangement is, but he essentially has adopted what we could call the Ben Priest role in the new startup. Yeah. I think when word first got out that you and David were going to do this, it was very interesting from my point of view to sort of speculate as to who that third person would be. Yeah. And the one thing I felt for sure was that you wouldn't want to go for a white man, given the current climate. But was that a consideration? Was that a thought? Was that an aim? And why ultimately did you end up with Ian?
I mean, we met quite a few people, and I would say that we probably met more female creative partners than we did men, and we were certainly very interested in working with some of them. 2 of our favourites chose to do other things. One of them got, I think, what they thought was a better offer, and the other one thought that this wasn't the time to be doing a startup. And I mean,
name names, James Murphy. Name names.
With COVID, and also with COVID looming, you could probably look at them and go, they probably both potentially made a very wise decision, and both are in phenomenal roles and doing very, very well despite COVID. So the thing is that, but Ian was also on our list, and I mean, I have to be honest with you, is that we were keen to look at a great range of people, but some people sort of deselected themselves, as I said, and then Ian was someone that we felt was, he was a very thoughtful and a very kind of ego-free person. He was absolutely a creative spirit, and I know that sounds a bit perhaps sort of saccharine, but he is someone who is a purely creative thinker. And I think David is so good at business and strategy, and I'm probably quite practical and always thinking about the logistics. And we really needed someone who would carry that torch. And so ultimately, when you're forging something around a small number of people, you do in the end become blind to issues of, gender or ethnicity, because it's such a cauldron. You have to look at it and go, do the various personalities and the characters dovetail together in a way that complements each other or make up for each other's strengths and weaknesses, and so on.
So there you are. You've signalled your intent sometime around summer of 2019, I think. And what was your actual start date, James?
May the 19th.
May the 19th, 2020.
Yeah.
Right.
So right in the middle. Yeah.
So yeah, really. So you really, we've talked about the difficulties of going through it again and doing so from a very different place, certainly financially. But then you're hit by you're needing to launch in the middle of lockdown. In fact, really May. I suppose things were easing off by May, but nonetheless, what's the experience been of trying to get this thing up and running during such a difficult period?
Well, first of all, actually, I think when we launched, it definitely felt like it was right in the depths of that lockdown, because whilst the weather was very nice and so on, I mean, I think everyone was still staying firmly at home and not really going anywhere at all. And yeah, I think, and certainly we had paused beforehand to think, should we delay? Should we wait till the autumn? And I think because naively, perhaps like a lot of people, we looked at that first lockdown situation and almost like your body clock, I think gave you the impression that the first week of September, a bit like back to school, it'll all be sorted by then and then we'll go back to normal. And I think probably a lot of people in all sorts of industries thought, yes, we'll have lockdown, there'll be the summer, and then we'll be back to normal in the autumn. So it was quite tempting to delay, and it crossed our minds. But I think we thought, no, let's push on, because whilst there are challenges in doing it, there are actually some we do benefit from some of this situation in the sense of being, because we're building something from nothing in lockdown. It's not like we're trying to retool something that already exists or reshape legacy systems that we've established. It's a totally blank sheet. So, we're now in January 2021, and it's a business that began virtually and is still virtual. But there's a sort of rhythm to it and a way of working that works. I think so funnily enough, the initial challenge of starting, I think we felt about a week in, do you know what, this is very doable, we're experienced, and we're able to use that experience in rather exciting new ways. And the discipline of doing things over Zoom and Teams meant that your conversations are more to the point and your decision making is quicker, and that was good. But I think there are definitely challenges that have emerged subsequently, which are, and I think they're not what we expected, because there's nearly 30 of us now, and we're in a situation where, most of those people are in their early or mid 20s. And interestingly, I think the sort of oldsters like us have dealt with the virtual Zoom existence perhaps better than some of the youngsters have, because for us, we've done this before, now we're doing it in an interesting and fresh and a way that has new challenges. For some of the younger members of the team, I think it's become apparent that, quite understandably, I think they would quite like the sense that somewhere in London there's a large building that is a base and an agency, and it's our home, and there's a sort of physical presence there. And there isn't a physical presence at the moment. It's something that exists in the ether. We've had to try and lean in to create proxies for some of those things that we would just have by being in the same space. And I mean, I really, really hope that by the middle of this year, we will be returning to some more normal physical way of working. Although I hope also that we won't return to the way it was before, that it will be a more enlightened way of working.
Actually, I read somewhere that you said a startup was like a gang of mates starting together in a small space. I mean, clearly that hasn't been possible.
Yeah.
And have you found that easy to adapt to? I get the young people part of it, but physically, from your perspective as the kind of leader, one of the leaders of the group, have you found that difficult?
It's been frustrating not to be in a space together, because I think the thing is, you look at it and go, one of the most enjoyable things about being a startup is that sense that you're a small gang, it's you against the world, and the ability to kind of work very intensively in your space together and then go down the pub afterwards. It's simple pleasures, but I think they make a difference. And we've missed that. And I think that's definitely an important thing that I think we look at and go, it's a shame we haven't managed to experience that. But equally, we're still only sort of about 28 people. So hopefully by the time we can congregate in a place of work, it'll still be a family, and it won't have become a business as such. Yeah. And I think the other thing is that it's also become clear that there are certain, whilst you can actually move through discussing things, debating challenges, reaching solutions quite quickly on things like Zoom and Teams, there are certain points in what we do that definitely don't benefit from being virtual. If you're trying to create a large pitch for a complicated client, and it's that situation where basically it would be really nice to have a space where you can have your hundreds of bits of paper up on the wall and be debating things and, you know, ripping some things down and putting some other things up. That isn't possible. And you're trying, the proxy for that is a sort of 170-page Google Doc.
Yeah.
You'll say, oh, can you go to page 134, please? And, you know, and it's just cumbersome. It doesn't have that fluid energy that you have in when you're in a space together.
Yeah. And have you found, because obviously I'm assuming you started on May the 19th with no clients, has the new business process been more difficult for you remotely, or did you have a kind of a book of people who you were kind of lined up to talk to?
No, I mean, I think the new business process has been manageable, but it's been less enjoyable in the sense that, again, I mean, we've just done this morning, we did a chemistry meeting, and we actually did one yesterday, and that's really quite frustrating because you know, it would be so much better if you were all together with those people.
Yeah.
And instead there's just a sort of, it's a slightly constipated process. And you know, and actually one of the clients was absolutely brilliant because they created a fantastic icebreaker at the beginning of the meeting, which was kind of, what's your most embarrassing lockdown fact? And then if you couldn't think of one, they had a wheel of fortune and they span you to answer questions. So, I mean, they really, really put the effort in to try and make the chemistry meeting work. And I think that, so there are elements of the process where it's just not as good as it could be. Yeah. And I think that the other thing that's happened, and I think particularly coming back after Christmas, is some of the good behaviours of the first lockdown, where people were quite economical with their diarying of Zoom meetings and so on. Now you get suddenly, there's a 2-hour Zoom meeting in your diary. And you know, that's the wrong way to do things. You know, this isn't a medium to sit on for 2 hours.
No, it really isn't.
Actually, on that score, I'll ask the last question in a sec, but on that score, one thing I absolutely haven't understood from the start, I understand why Zoom meetings have taken the place of in-person meetings, but why on earth have they taken over from phone calls? It's very strange, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. Someone would contact you and say, should we do a Zoom? No, we'll just talk on the phone, you maniac.
Well, it's funny again, because basically meetings have been downgraded, phone calls have been upgraded. You know?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But one question actually for both of you to answer. There does seem to have been, and to some extent you've hinted at this, James, there does seem to have been a bit of a turn in the mood since the new year. And it seems to me that a lot of people, perhaps because we all felt a little psychologically as though 2020 had us in its thrall, and once it was over, things would automatically improve. And of course, we're still away from that. Have you detected a change in the mood, James? And to what do you feel able to do for your teams, for your staff, in terms of improving morale?
Well, do you mean a change in the mood within the agency world or in the industry in general?
No, I mean on a more personal level. I just mean all of us. I think I'm detecting this from friends. That people who broadly got through the last 9 months feeling okay about themselves and coping are suddenly hitting a wall where they're really struggling, actually.
Yeah, no, and I think that's definitely the case. There was a sort of, I think, as we sort of went into, there's a new strain of COVID and there's another more severe lockdown coming and so on. I think Christmas slightly took everyone's eye off the ball because it's like, oh, well, it's Christmas and we're all used to being locked down together anyway at Christmas. But coming back in the new year did feel a little bit bleak. I think perhaps there's been a sort of a counterbalance to that, which is that there's no doubt that the new business pipeline has absolutely kicked into life since coming back. And I don't think that's unique to us at all. And I think that something has happened where quite a lot of clients may have been pondering things last year, but decided to hold fire and now have taken action as the new year started. So I think that whilst things generally felt a bit more morose and melancholy than they should have done coming back, there was quickly a large injection of adrenaline, I think, in terms of potential pitches. I think we're also perhaps blessed in the situation that we have two very, very large productions going on in quite intense time periods. So there's quite a lot to do. There's a lot of excited discussion and sort of sometimes heated discussion about those things, and that's actually sort of managing to distract from the sort of general torpor of lockdown.
Graham, what about at Moore Kingston Smith? Has there been a sort of downturn in morale?
Look, I think I would agree with what James just said. I think, definitely there was a feeling, I suppose, that maybe the new year would in some way change, the outlook. And I think that very quickly got burst, effectively day one, we were locked down again. So I think the first couple of weeks of January have been tough, right? I think mentally it felt a tougher environment, a slightly darker environment. I think there is a lot still going on, right? And I think once you attune back into that, I think you can create positivity again. But I think, honestly, the next 6-8 weeks are going to be tough, right? But I think after that, you'll have a kind of huge kind of burst of pent up demand hitting the system at the same time where we open up, and hopefully we won't kind of go back into a mass negativity with more versions of this and all that kind of stuff that will send us slowly mad during 2021.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think spring is something we can all look forward to this year. James, thank you so much for giving up your time for us today. Really appreciate it. And Graham, thank you as always.
Thanks very much, James. Thanks a lot.